My father went to law school after college at Washington and Lee University in Lexington, Virginia, and upon graduation became an assistant United States attorney. Well, actually, he went with an insurance company for a year or two, Travelers Insurance, which trained a lot of young lawyers in the business. And then he went with the U.S. Attorney's Office for the Eastern District of New York, which is headquartered in Brooklyn. And he became the head of the criminal division there. This is during Prohibition, and it was a very active office, needless to say. And he was there as an assistant U.S. attorney until Franklin Delano Roosevelt was elected president, at which time he was replaced with a Democrat. My father was a Republican. And but during his experiences as an assistant United States attorney, well, he prosecuted many rum runners and as well as other people who broke the federal laws. After his experience with the U.S. Attorney's Office, he became an assistant district attorney in Suffolk County, where it was a part-time job in those days. He also had a practice of law, private practice in Babylon Village, and realized success in that regard. When the war came along, actually before we got in the war, he went in the Navy. He applied for active duty.
During the war, Dad, in 1940, he was a lawyer in the village of Babylon. He'd come home every evening by 6 o'clock, come in the back door, and this one particular evening, Pat and I, my brother and I, were sitting in the kitchen talking with Mom, and she was getting supper ready. And then when the old man came in, he kissed my mother and said, "Hello, boys." And then he said, "Well," he said, "I've given up my law practice." My mother was shocked. She said, "Why? What happened?" He said, "I've applied for active duty in the United States Navy." Yeah. This was a year and 8 months, 9 months before Pearl Harbor was bombed. But he said, "We're going to get into this war, and the sooner the better." To go beat Germany, you see, and Mussolini. And so that's what he did. He went on active duty. And he was a lieutenant, senior grade in the Navy. And because he had been an attorney, they put him in the Naval Intelligence. And he was stationed in New York City, and he hated it. He wanted to get to sea, be a real sailor. He's commuting every day, like a lot of his friends, going to the city. And he wrote over 30 letters requesting sea duty. And by now, Pearl Harbor had happened. So somebody in Bureau of Personnel said, "Well, this guy really means it, I guess." So they sent him down to an amphibious training school in Little Creek, Virginia, and Solomons, Maryland, 2 schools. And when finished there, he had command of 12 landing ships. Not the biggest, which are LSTs. They carry tanks and trucks. But he had the next one, which carried infantry, 200 soldiers in each ship, with a little foot gangway down each side of the bow. And they would run right up on the beach, and the troops go ashore, you see. So anyway, he took those ships across the Atlantic under their own power, across the back end of a big convoy bound for the Mediterranean. And when they got to the closest point of approach to the Horta, Azores, Dad broke off. He had orders to break away and go to Horta. And when he got there, there was a British destroyer waiting for him to escort him to England. And I think he spent 2 days in Horta getting supplies and maybe fuel oil. And then under the escort of the British destroyer, they proceeded to England. And on June 6th that year, 1944, he landed the 115th Infantry on Omaha Beach. And this is all in my first book, but they went across the channel. There were thousands of warships, from small, tiny things to battleships, all going there, you see, to Normandy. Middle of the night, nobody had any navigation lights on. Very few people had radar. But everything was so well planned that there were no collisions. And it was a bit choppy out there too that day. And the next morning, they're 3 miles off the beach, and the old man got a signal to heave to. So he told me, he said, Tom, he said, I got the glasses and looked at the beach and I could see heavy fighting going on. And I couldn't see what sense it made for me to wait out here. He said, I had 2,000 soldiers. So he told his signalman, flash the command ship and for orders. And the command ship flashed back with a blinking light, wait. The old man said, wait, hell, we're going in. So, I don't know what General Bradley and Admiral Hall and the brass hats all thought about when they saw L.R. Henry heading for the beach, but he went. And he landed the 115th Infantry. He told me, he said, Tom, he said, I didn't land where I had been told to go. He said, but I went where the fighting was the heaviest. I figured that's where they needed me the most. So he said, that's where I landed my guys. And, which he did, with heavy losses, of course. Some of his sailors got killed and wounded. Of the dozen ships he had, one was so badly damaged they couldn't get it off the beach. They had to leave it there, but the other 11 got back to England. They're all damaged to some extent. And German 88s nailed that one. Hit it below the waterline and sank right there.